Hey, how's it going? All the news channels are reporting on the deadly fungus that has already taken the lives of millions of people. Despite humanity having dedicated every possible resource to combat it, a cure has still not yet been found. Initial estimates had warned that before scientists could even develop a solution, a full 80% of the world's population could end up being wiped out. In response to this, a determined woman gathered together the best scientists on the entire planet in the hopes of saving humanity from this truly lethal threat. Sometime later, in an isolated shelter somewhere, a teenage girl suddenly awakens. On the wall of her bedroom, a scary poster displays a human skull from which some mushrooms are sprouting. Meanwhile, out at an abandoned farm, two scientists find a dried-up human skeleton that has fungus growing right out of its skull. Very carefully, they begin to collect some samples of the fungus for their study. Suddenly, a man appears on the scene, demanding that they leave the mortal remains in peace and get off of his property. The scientists try their best to argue with him, but he absolutely refuses to back down. Sensing the tension rising, the guard shoots the man and quickly gets the team out of there, convinced that other people might be nearby. He was actually the only immune person that they knew of, and instead of killing him, they really should have captured him for further study. On their way back to the shelter, they launch a drone to go and scan the surrounding area. Luckily, the data they get back reveals that the levels of fungal spores in the air are quite minimal. As soon as they enter the bunker, the scientists begin their analysis of the new samples, including one that was collected from the man who was shot. To everyone's great surprise, his blood contains absolutely no spores. He was in fact completely clean. This intrigues them even more, especially when considering that infected remains were found in that very same stable. The suspicion is raised that the local environment might have influenced it, but for now, the whole thing remains a complete mystery. In the room next door, the girl named Leah is learning how to pilot the drone under the guidance of a man. She has some trouble at the very beginning and ends up crashing the device, but on her second attempt, she successfully manages to fly it all throughout the shelter. Meanwhile, two of the female scientists are continuing their research, determined to understand exactly how that man had managed to avoid getting the infection. Leah's father then shows up and suggests they do a little bit of physical training together. Afterwards, he shows her how to turn common items into weapons by just using a knife and a mop, explaining that this skill could be essential during an emergency. Meanwhile, back in the lab, the scientists are deep in a discussion about their ongoing studies. A whole year has already passed, and there still haven't been any significant breakthroughs made. One of them insists that they absolutely need to focus on the initial stages of the infection, or they will just continue to spin their wheels in circles. Later on, a man is examining the shelter's filtration system. After changing out the filters, he realizes that it's not having any effect at all. There is a leak happening somewhere in the system, which is allowing the outside air to seep inside. Armed with this new information, he heads straight over to warn the scientists. Dan cautions them that even if they identify the exact problem, there is simply no way to repair it because there are no spare parts available. This represents a very serious danger if another strong fungal outbreak were to occur, as the shelter would not protect them. Upon learning about the breach, Gustav suggests to Kim that they should all move to another nearby shelter, one that is supposedly equipped with a fully functional laboratory. Kim hesitates at first, not wanting to leave, but it seems like there is no other alternative. After talking with the lead scientist, Gustav gets in touch with Johnny, who is already on his way to the IAT and should be arriving at their meeting point very soon. It is now time for them to relocate. Johnny promises that he'll arrive within just a few days. Afterwards, Gustav goes to see his daughter. She is reading quietly when he arrives, and he invites her to go for a walk. As they stroll through the forest, Leah soaks up the sun and the fresh air. Gustav tells her the story of how he first met her mother at a pizza parlor. Leah then confesses that she often dreams about her mom, imagining them together, just laughing and dancing. Back in the lab, Kim starts to pack up all the equipment and her notes for the upcoming mover. As she approaches Vera, she stops and just stares at her for a moment in complete silence, as if it's a farewell that she can't quite put into words. The very next morning, Kim isolates the laboratory and walks all alone into the containment chamber. Vera watches on helplessly through a glass door, while Kim takes a deep breath and then deliberately inhales the spores from the fungus. Alarms immediately start blaring throughout the entire shelter. Everyone now has only a few minutes to evacuate before the spores manage to spread everywhere. Kim has chosen to sacrifice herself for the sake of science. The decision to evacuate without an extraction plan for her was a big mistake, as they could have lost all of their important data. She intends to record every single stage of the infection and send all the data to Vera. It's the only possible path forward. She believes with all of her strength that her own death could finally lead to the cure that the world so desperately needs. The team says their goodbyes in total silence, and, with very heavy hearts, they gather up what they can possibly carry. They put on their gas masks and leave the shelter behind them, not knowing if they will ever see Kim again one day. Once outside, Dan analyzes the air for any spores or the presence of any strangers. When he's certain that there's no immediate threat, they all lower their shields and head on their way. After crossing through part of the forest, the group reaches the water's edge and decides to take a short break. This was a really bad idea. In unknown and hostile territory, stopping in an open area like this is just making themselves an easy target. They examine the surrounding region and position their guards. Through the drone's camera, Leah detects an enemy device that is firing right at them. The sudden attack startles her, and in her fright, she drops the drone right into the water. Immediately, shots start coming from all directions, forcing the guards to have to fire back. In the middle of all the confusion, the scientists and Leah run towards the IAT, which is waiting for them on the shore. Along the way, they drag the wounded Jiang with them and barely manage to get on board. While the others tend to her wound, Dan takes the helm and steers the boat away from the coast. He manages to re-establish the connection with the fallen drone and gets it to rise up again, but the chase is just too intense for him to handle all by himself. He calls Leah over to help him pilot the drone. As they are flying over the forest, they manage to find Gustav, but Leah is then faced with an absolutely devastating image. He is now dead. In complete shock, she screams out in total despair. Overcome by her grief and rage, Leah grabs a rifle from the deck and starts firing towards the woods, trying her best to hit the enemies. Later on, Vera pulls her away from there. Jean's condition is getting worse, which requires immediate medical attention. Vera carefully removes the bullet, stitches up the wound, and then applies a bandage to it. During the night, Leah opens up to Jean, revealing all her fears. She has already lost her mother and now her father too. Jean consoles her and promises to always protect her, but she sets one single condition. Leah must obey her without any question. Meanwhile, the unknown attackers report everything back to their commander, who orders for more caution and insists that Vera must be kept alive. Even with their escape on the IAT, the enemy has an insider on board the vessel. This particular agent will do whatever it takes to get Vera to her final destination. The very next day, with everyone else busy, Leah notices that the wind is picking up, but nobody is currently at the helm. When she calls out for help, a man comes running, takes command, and then asks for assistance in hoisting the sails. Vera rushes over to the winch, but it appears to be completely stuck. Dan climbs up to pull the rope by hand, but a sudden gust of wind spins the boom and throws him right into the water. Without a moment's hesitation, Leah throws him a life buoy and dives in right after him. She helps him stay afloat while she watches the IAT slowly drift further away. On board, the captain tries to maneuver the boat, but just can't manage to turn it around. Vera suggests that they start the engines, but he simply refuses to do so. Suddenly, a speedboat appears at high speed, heading directly towards the two of them who are still in the water. With no other alternatives, Leah and the man agree to get on board. As she looks back, Leah sees the IAT disappear over the horizon, and she asks where they are going, but she doesn't get any answer at all. Defying the captain's orders, Vera starts up the engine, now determined to catch up with them. When the group finally arrives at the island, they find an established community living there. They are greeted by Ori, the leader, who invites them all to come inside. He offers them a place to rest while he goes to get changed. Vera is quite surprised to learn that they live there on a permanent basis, despite the constant risk of the infection. Ori notices her doubt and promises to show her their secret, leading her over to his house. He then reveals some blue crystals. which were developed through various experiments as a working solution against the fungal infection. It really and truly works. He offers Vera the chance to test it out herself, but she prefers to take a sample to her portable lab instead. He agrees to this, but he laments that their full laboratory was completely destroyed in a fire. Meanwhile, Leah and Jane witness an argument that's happening between two members of the community. A young man had skipped his patrol duty to go for a swim, which had really irritated a girl. Their fight is interrupted when Vera rushes past on her way to the lab with the crystal. So as not to bother her, Leah and Dan decide to go and explore the place. The analysis soon reveals a high concentration of a drug that attacks the fungus's immune system. Vera shares this data with Kim, who suspects there are risks to the internal organs. A more in-depth analysis will be needed, and that is going to require a stationary laboratory. That's why the team urgently needs to get themselves all the way to K-76. In the meantime, Leah is scanning the territory, and she spots a building that's located nearby. She decides that she should go and investigate it. Dan notices a boat out on the water, and upon taking a closer look, he identifies two men, the very same ones who had attacked them back in the forest. When they finally leave, he finds a package that was left behind. He runs over to Jane with the object, and together they go ahead and open it up. They discover that it's a military-grade drone, the exact same one that had attacked them before. From that moment on, they should have treated the entire community as a potential enemy. Trusting them at all was a fatal mistake. Dan now understands that the island's residents want to eliminate them. Jean calms him down and tells him to go and gather the group because they will all need to escape. She will stay behind to ensure their safe departure. Inside of the building, Leah finds a man who has been tied up. It is Johnny, the real owner of the IAT. Feeling relieved to have been found, he promises that he will help them to get away. Unfortunately, the other men soon realize that their drone is missing and they begin to search the whole area. After completing her analysis, Vera seeks out Ori to voice her concerns. She has identified methamphetamine inside the crystal. Although it provides some momentary relief, the side effects will ultimately destroy their internal organs. This means that they are all doomed either by the fungus or by the very drug itself. Meanwhile, Dan tries to get to Vera, but he can't get past the guards. Leah shows up and tries to force her way in, but he stops her, fearing they'll all be killed if they insist. Vera's revelation doesn't faze Ori for even a single second. He completely ignores the dire consequences and doesn't even seem to believe her at all. To him, Vera is just jealous for not having been the first one to discover the cure. All that he really wants is for her to produce as much of those crystals as she possibly can. But Vera absolutely refuses to do it. Just outside, Dan distracts Leah so that she won't see the very man who killed her father. Before he can get her away, they are both intercepted. Ori then orders Vera, Leah, and Dan to be tied up, hand to hand. He has a plan in mind. If they won't produce the cure willingly, he will simply force them to. He chooses a member of the community and injects him with a massive dose of the fungus. The man dies almost instantly, and within minutes, mushrooms begin to sprout from his face. Once they have matured, Ori's assistant plucks one off and then infects the prisoners by blowing the spores directly into Vera's face. Next, he does the exact same thing to Dan. Leah is supposed to be next, but before the spores can even reach her, a bullet goes right through the attacker's skull. Jean had been hiding in the woods, providing them with cover. Total chaos then breaks out. Leah frees her hands from the ropes and runs over to help both Vera and Dan. Under a hail of crossfire, the three of them run towards the IAT, but their luck completely runs out. Johnny is hit by a bullet and dies instantly. Dan speeds away with the rest of the group. Leah tries to communicate with Jean over the radio. She refuses to leave her behind, but the guard knows that her time is now up. She says her goodbyes and reminds Leah of her promise to obey without hesitation. A few moments later, a raider finds her and then kills her. Later on, aboard the IAT and heading for the K-76 refuge, Leah is piloting her drone, searching for any sign of Jane. She eventually locates her, lifeless on the ground. Dan comes over, stops Leah, and takes control of the drone himself. He no longer believes in any cure or in any salvation for them. Vera gets in contact with Kim, whose condition is now deteriorating very rapidly. With her last bit of strength, Kim shares a vital piece of data. The mycelium isn't attacking affecting her body itself, but what is actually inside of it. It's as if the fungus is desperate to expel its own spores and just escape. She pleads with Vera not to give up on her research and to please try and save all of humanity. This conversation completely exhausts Kim, who then falls silent forever. Seeing Vera's despair, Leah offers her some words of encouragement. Kim's final message, combined with Leah's own sense of hope, sparks a sudden realization in Vera's mind. She has finally come up with a possible solution. They need to get to the laboratory immediately so they can test her new theory. After a very long time, they finally reach the bunker. As they step onto the shore, they spot two boats out on the water. Ori and his men are in hot pursuit of them. Leah then offers to go and distract them. While Vera and Dan are heading towards the lab, they run into some difficulties. When they arrive at the main gates, they are shocked to see a huge iron lock that really shouldn't be there at all. By using some explosives, they manage to blast open the entrance and they finally get access to the inside. Meanwhile, Leah maneuvers the drone to try and hinder her pursuers. She successfully disables one of the boats with an electromagnetic pulse that fries its engine, but the other one makes it to the shore at full speed. Leah then runs back to rejoin with her group. Ori and his sidekick disembark on the shore. He stays put in that spot while his partner goes off in search of the fugitives. However, the henchman, who is now tired of just taking orders, turns against Ori and then stabs him. Inside the bunker, the scientist and the man begin their search for the laboratory. Before she joins the others, Leah locks the doors behind all of them, but her effort is completely futile. The attacker easily breaks through the makeshift lock with very little effort. As she observes her surroundings, Vera realizes that this place isn't a real bunker at all, but rather a museum that is filled with various exhibits and some mannequins. To avoid being caught by him, they all decide to split up. At one point, the henchman almost manages to capture Dan, but his attention is then diverted by the little girl. He runs right after her, but quickly loses sight of her when he enters one of the other rooms. Without wasting any more time, Dan figures out how to at least activate the red emergency lights in the facility. Using the faint glow that they provide, Leah improvises herself a spear out of a mop handle and a knife that she has. In the meantime, Vera finds what appears to be a laboratory, and then she explains her plan over the radio. She intends to detoxify the body by cleansing all the toxins and waste products so that the fungus will stop seeing it as a viable threat. With just a small dose of T143, she hopes to form a kind of symbiotic relationship with the fungus. If she can pull this off, she just might be able to save all of humanity. Instead of trying to kill it, she has decided to trick it, an approach that no one else had ever thought of before. As he's going down the stairs, Dan ends up running right into the henchman, but luck is on his side for once. The enemy's gun has run out of bullets. The man flees, hiding himself in a nearby corner after tossing a small explosive onto the floor. The henchman finds the device and then throws it right inside of Dan's shelter. A few seconds later, a strong explosion shakes the entire place. Hearing the loud boom, Vera tries to contact the others, but she only gets complete silence in return. Without waiting around to be found, Leah sets off all by herself to go and hunt down the bad guy. She finds him inside one of the back rooms. Surprised by her sudden attack with the improvised spear, he is left completely stunned. Shaken by the seriousness of what she has just done, Leah freezes up, which gives her enemy the chance to pull out a pistol and fire it at her. With absolutely nowhere left to hide, Leah falls down to the ground, dead. Gathering up his remaining strength, the man finds Vera and then begins to drag her outside. He doesn't care at all about the cure that she's discovered for all of humanity. He just wants to use her to produce his own personal drug. As he's leading her outside, a voice suddenly echoes from behind him. It is Leah, who actually survived the attack. The girl hits the raider with a drone and manages to knock him right down. Then, Ori, who is still breathing, finishes off his former partner. Afraid that the man will somehow react and kill Leah, Vera places herself right between them. But there's no more fight left in him. The man's strength finally abandons him, and he closes his eyes for the very last time. At that instant, Dan emerges from behind them, alive and completely unharmed. Happy to have survived and to have finally found the cure, they all embrace each other. Later on, two men are sitting together in a boat that's adrift on the water, and they are wondering just what they should do now. Ending Fungus, a 2023 science fiction and thriller film. And I'll see you in the next video.